Hey Blue Table fans, today we are taking a look at the new Necron Monolith, and I have opinions about this model. Not only how it looks and puts together and paints, but also how it plays in the game. I've actually only played one game with this in it, and that for only one turn, because that's all we really had time for. So first off, this is on a 6-inch around base. I can't tear it off right now. But I did put quite a bit of effort into it. Too bad it really won't be seen or appreciated under this giant figure. Now I had hoped that the monolith would be over 7.6 inches in diameter because then it would physically prevent any other creature from getting onto an objective. But it is not. You can still, if you manage to get into base contact, you will be able to score an objective. And all right, so let's take a look at the model itself. First off, it has this central core, this column with this this sort of faceted round jewel on top of it. And so you're going to want to put this thing together in different pieces. So it has a core. The core has two sheaths on either side of it, and that forms, if you look in here, you can see these metal cords, and that's the central housing of the figure. And you want to paint all of that separately. You could conceivably paint the whole central core as one thing, putting the three elements together ahead of time, but I don't really recommend it. Once you get that in place, you've got to create the two wall sections, which both look I think identical. They have these engines. The core actually has these engines attached to it. So you create these wall sections, and by the way, this is a little crooked just because of the way the base is. I haven't turned it right on this base. The base is not flat, it's angled. So you have to put it on in a certain way for things to be perfectly flat. Anyway, so you put on this wall facing, and each of those has two of these interior blocks on it that attach to the corner, and they just float there. And so once you have your two wall sections painted, then you can really put it all together. Then on the front and back, on the front you have this gate with steps. These steps break for like no reason. They have this tiny little light piece in them. So you just got to be careful, like when you're picking it up and maneuvering it and stuff like that. You can't pick it up by those steps. They'll snap, which is what happened to me. And you can see the central core. There's like a round energy thing in there. And so in the front half it has this gate, and there's two optional gates. One has a Necron warrior materializing out of it. I didn't really like that one. These weapons, there's two options for this weapon. You could magnetize them quite easily. I didn't. I just wanted the Doomsday, what are they called? The Doom something. I can't remember. And they do articulate, so you have to put them on at a certain time. So you have to paint these ahead of time, prime these two side pieces, and then put it together, and then you can paint the rest of it. So it has to be done in a certain order. The last facing has this really super cool canoptic spider type creature, a very Geiger-esque pattern on it, which I absolutely love. I gotta tell you, there's everything to love about this model. To pick it up, you either have to pick it up by the corners on the base, which are very steady, or you gotta just have two fingers here. You gotta pick it up by the top. And these are separate, but they glue on very nicely. If you use plastic glue, then they're never gonna come up. I use super glue on the entire thing, so sometimes they tend to snap. Well, only once. So anyway, all right, guys, this is the monolith. I love the model. I love what it does in the game. So let's talk about the monolith's rules. First off, it is a super heavy, and it is titanic. So you have to get a separate detachment for it, and you have to pay command points. Your first option, I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called a super heavy auxiliary detachment, and that allows you to take one Lord of War. And that's what this is. That's the type of thing that it is. like troops, elites, HQ. This is a Lord of War. So you can take a super heavy auxiliary detachment. I think that's what it's called. You get 1 Lord of War in that, and I think it costs 2 command points, possibly 3. So already this thing is costing you command points just to include it in your army. It costs 360, 380 if you take the then how's the name escaping me now? The Doomsday guns. Anyway, extra 20 points for those. And this thing will make stuff blow up. These guns are amazing. In fact, you know what? I'm just going to make a separate video on the Monolith. It's really a cool piece. Anyway, it has tons of firepower. It's an absolute terror in close combat. In close combat, it uses the Portal of Exile, which is, it basically teleports enemies away. So in terms of the game, the Monolith has 6 attacks. Those do degrade to D6 and then I think 3 attacks. It has 6 attacks that automatically hit. And they're very strong. I can't remember the strength offhand, but they're -3 and then 3 wounds. So this thing just, it gobbles up elite infantry like nothing. And this creature will blow up 1 tank almost regardless of size every turn. And you just move it right up the middle of the board. And if anybody wants a piece of this action, you can go right into combat. Because it's Titanic, I think is the name for it. Again, I'm going to do a separate video for the rules for it. Because it's Titanic, you can just move out of combat and still shoot and charge. It does not fly, though. It feels like it should be hovering over things and whatnot, but does not have the fly keyword. So you have to really watch people sort of wrapping around so you don't have to use a desperate breakout stratagem to get away. It does move 8 inches, which is really nice. And again, this thing, because it can fire into close combat, you're just gonna, there won't be anything left that attacks it. It's really cool. I had a good time. Don't let it come up against Mortarion, though. Mortarion will one-shot this thing like nothing. I did a little sample game with my son, and I think he did 36 wounds with no saves in 1 turn. And that is a problem of this piece, is that it only has a 2-up save. It doesn't have any invulns, so it tends to go down pretty quick. You can fix that with a Chronomancer, but anything that has to be fixed isn't that great. But I gotta tell you, I had a lot of fun playing this model, and it was an absolute terror on the tabletop, and it's really, really super cool looking, a great centerpiece to any Necron army.